Once a titan of music, fashion, and culture, Sean Diddy Combs built an empire on charisma, ambition, and power. But in 2025, that empire teeters on the edge of collapse. Federal prosecutors have pulled back the velvet curtain to reveal a dark underworld of alleged coercion, trafficking, and abuse allegedly orchestrated by the mogul himself. The charges are staggering: sex trafficking, racketeering, and transporting individuals for prostitution. Testimony from former lovers, employees, and insiders paints a chilling portrait of freak-off parties and a lifestyle fueled by fear, control, and excess. Once revered as a cultural icon, Diddy now sits stone-faced in a New York courtroom as his past is dissected in brutal detail. Millions in hush money, secret recordings, and text messages form the foundation of the prosecution's case. With the public watching and his legacy on trial, the fall of Sean Combs is no longer just a scandal. It's a cultural reckoning, and the final verdict has yet to be written. Tonight, we are live from New York with all the latest as both sides prepare for their closing arguments.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. Great to have you aboard. And yes, another big trial, another big week. And this is Closing Arguments Eve. Welcome. Great to have you here. So for Sean Diddy Combs, he was living a life of luxury, and it was a life that he created for himself. After he built his empire, he could eat at the finest restaurants, drive the fanciest cars, stay at the nicest hotels, take the most amazing vacations. It was a wonderful life. Who would not want that life? But as we're learning during the course of this trial, there was another part of his life, which was a life of debauchery. Now, once you get into that life, it's not necessarily illegal. You can do these things with other consenting people. The question is, for this jury, were these other people consenting to this other life that Sean Diddy Combs was living? And that's really what the trial's about. All of it's on display. We've seen it, we've heard it. The question is, was it illegal? If it is, that life of luxury, that life of debauchery could be a life in prison for Sean Diddy Combs. Everything is at stake in this case. Serious charges, serious ramifications. So the decision that is made either at the end of this week or the beginning of next week or in the middle of next week, whenever this verdict comes down, will determine the rest of Diddy Combs' life. So here we are, getting ready for those closing arguments, which will be happening or beginning tomorrow in New York City. And it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting because everything's at stake here. Think about, first of all, from the defense attorney's perspective, right? I always like to think about it. You've got a client paying you a lot of money, a lot of money. Is this case winnable? You know, you're going against the federal government. Then if you're the federal government, you make this very public accusation. And could you imagine at the end of it all, Diddy just walks out of the courthouse? Either one of those scenarios, very, very possible. Let's get some inside information. Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft joining us live from New York City, outside of the federal courthouse where all this is happening. And today was not a day for evidence or testimony, but it was an important day, this charge conference, and things happened that in most cases that we cover on Court TV don't happen. Tell us the latest, Kelly.
Well, good evening to you, Vinny. This charge conference just ended about 15 minutes ago. So it was supposed to start at noon, then it was pushed back, then it was pushed back again. And then finally it got underway at 3:45 p.m. Eastern. And again, people are just making their way outside the federal courthouse because it just ended. During this charge conference, the prosecution team, as well as defense counsel, they made various proposals, Vinny, to those jury instructions. So they would make the proposals, objections would be raised, and then the judge would either agree or overrule some of the ideas and the proposals that the attorneys were putting forth. So again, this took most of the day, and very important because we can take a look at the proposed verdict form. So some major developments took place today. I know we're going to talk about them, but when we talk about the verdict form and what the jurors are going to have to look at, you can see this is going to be specifically under the racketeering. So you can see that there are many different allegations under racketeering. So what jurors have to find is 2 of these predicate acts to satisfy that charge of racketeering. Now, when you're taking a look at what you see on your screen, they did streamline their case. And I know we're going to talk about it, but it was a big development here today, Vinnie. But I also want to say I was inside the courtroom when this charge conference began. And Sean Diddy Combs, he made his way out and sat next to his defense counsel. When he was making his way out, he looked back at a lot of his supporters and family members that were inside the courtroom. He kind of did a little kind of pound on his chest, kind of just expressing to his family that he loves them. He blew some kisses and was waving. He was in such good spirits today, Vinnie. Some of the best spirits that I have seen him yet.
That's interesting because the end is near. And soon the case will be out of his hands, out of his attorney's hands, and in the hands of 12 people that, you know, got a summons in the mail and came down and were placed on this jury. So let's get into the big development today with those allegations relative to the RICO counts, the predicate allegations. What exactly happened here in terms of the streamlining of this case?
And Vinnie, the judge had asked the federal prosecutors to streamline their case, and they did. We started to hear rumblings about this very early this morning, and then this all related to this charge conference being pushed back later and later today. And so what they are doing in this situation is under that racketeering conspiracy, they are now eliminating, for instance, arson, attempted arson, as well as those 2 allegations of kidnapping, as well as witness tampering. And I know we have a little bit of AI-generated testimony because this is federal court, so we can't bring you sound from inside the courtroom, even though we're in there, no cameras allowed. So we can do this through AI-generated information when the lawyer is speaking. Why don't we go ahead and listen to this? It's a little snippet of when they're talking about kidnapping. This is from the motion for a judgment of acquittal yesterday, but it all relates to the streamlining of these allegations.
The first incident is as to Capricorn Clark. Under New York law, she told the story about the lie detector test and how, according to her testimony, for 5 days straight, she was transported by Paul Offord to a building in Manhattan that was going to be the new office for Mr. Combs's businesses. And this does not satisfy the requirements under New York law. If she was ever restrained without her consent at all, most importantly, there's no evidence in the record that Mr. Combs knew that this was happening or agreed that a co-conspirator should kidnap her. At most, the evidence showed that he knew his jewelry was missing and that she was one of the employees being investigated for the possible theft of the jewelry. But her alleged interactions were entirely with Mr. Offord and the person she claims administers the lie detector test. There's no evidence whatsoever that if this occurred, that Mr. Combs had any idea it was going on. And speculation obviously can't fill the gap. In addition, there are serious questions about whether the government could prove that this was without her consent under New York law. She went willingly every day.
And they're talking about their Capricorn Clark. We heard Capricorn Clark. You're looking at her right there. She testified in this case, talking about this attempted alleged kidnapping. So again, those 2 allegations under racketeering conspiracy, those predicate acts, have been eliminated by the federal prosecutors. This, of course, also relates to Kid Cudi. We heard testimony from Kid Cudi saying that Sean Diddy Combs had torched his Porsche, that he believed Sean Diddy Combs torched his Porsche. But defense counsel, even on cross-examination, was indicating and suggesting there's no evidence linking Sean Combs to any of this activity. So now, that's gone. That's also gone, Vinnie. And then, of course, witness tampering, and this is in regard to Mia. So really the government streamlining his case here, Vinnie, and making certain it has a cohesive argument when it's presented tomorrow to the jury.
Okay, let's talk about tomorrow and the jury. It is closing arguments eve. We always celebrate it here on this program. What can we expect tomorrow?
And we just received some new information in regard to this, Vinnie, just as court was wrapping up just, again, a short time ago. The prosecutors will deliver their closing tomorrow. We're going to get started a little bit later. We were thinking it was going to be 9 a.m. It's going to be 10 a.m. Eastern. So tomorrow, only the prosecution is going to go. Then we're going to adjourn for the day. Then on Friday, defense counsel will deliver its closing argument. Defense counsel had said that they were going to take about 4 hours, but now, because of most likely the streamlining of this case, they said that they are only going to need about 3 hours. So again, they had initially said 4 hours. Prosecution is still sticking with its 4. Defense counsel now saying only 3 hours.
Okay, so then that'll be wrapped up by Friday, and the jury will get the case either late Friday or Monday.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Vinny. No real information as to now if the jury will get the case on Friday, but now with this abbreviated case, if you will, they might get it on Friday. The word had been they're not going to get the case until Monday, but now we are thinking just some chatter outside the courtroom because, of course, this is all just developing now. They might get the case on Friday. We'll have to see.
All right. Kelly Craft in New York City getting ready for the end of the Diddy case. Thank you so much. All right, let's bring in our think tank live in studio tonight. Criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor. He's from New Jersey, Al Wunsch III. Criminal defense attorney, former district attorney, I believe he's from Pittsburgh, PA, Matthew Mangino. And criminal defense attorney, he's right from here, the man behind the glasses, Josh Schiffer. Great to see everyone here on the Man Show tonight. Is this a sign of weakness that they're dropping these allegations? I know the judge said streamline it, but it's being streamlined because they didn't have evidence.
It is being streamlined because they didn't have evidence, but it's a smart move, I think, by the prosecution. Separate the wheat from the chaff and get yourself in and make it a good argument. The other stuff that's on there, they've got good proof on that stuff, and they demonstrated that throughout. So by getting rid of some of these weaker cases, it's going to make it stronger, it's going to make it more concise, and it's going to be easier for a jury.
Matthew, is this normal for a RICO case? We don't cover a lot of RICO here because it's usually in federal court, that you throw all this stuff out and then you start trimming the fat?
Well, it's not unusual to prune the case, to get rid of some of these predicate circumstances. But I think the thing here is, you know, streamline. The judge says streamline, and I think what the judge is saying, while she held on to these judgment of acquittal motions, is you got a problem with some of these things, and we're going to give you an opportunity to get rid of them instead of me get rid of them. So I think that's really what the story's about. They have 5 predicate offenses still out there, and they only need 2. So I mean, they're not in trouble by any means on that particular charge. But I think streamlining is code for clean it up.
But it highlights the betrayal. You know, my mentor, Jerry Spence, teaches there's betrayal in every criminal defense case. Now we've got betrayal. The federal government promised those juries this case in opening. And now they're coming back at the end and saying, never mind, we weren't right about some of this stuff that we made you sit through, that we spent millions of dollars, that we dedicated all these resources to. And that's going to fit right into the hands of some brilliant defense attorneys who, as I understand...
So you think it's a big part of the argument tomorrow?
Oh, absolutely. This is selective
Friday.
Prosecution. You're only targeting Mr. Combs because this video came out, and that's the only reason is political pressure. And look, we even overcharged him and then had to take some of it back. That arson information especially, it was egregious. Right. The allegations of torching a man's Porsche. And now it just doesn't matter? Come on.
Right, I think that's important, and I'm going to really pound away from a defense standpoint is, hey, ladies and gentlemen, you had to sit here and listen to this. This was such an important part of this case. We heard from witnesses that were reluctant to be here, but hey, now it doesn't matter. It's out of the picture.
It justifies their abbreviation of the defense side of the case. We didn't have to bring a big presentation. They have nothing. Yeah. And now they're starting to throw things out there. So, I mean, I think that's what I would be pounding on from the defense side.
Why was Diddy charged with RICO to begin with?
They needed it.
Why? What was this about? Was this, why did they go after him? Why at that point, if he's been allegedly doing this for 20 years, are these the civil cases that are leaking over into the criminal realm? But why RICO?
It was the
Why not just charge him for what he did?
Well, I think it's the range of sentencing. I mean, you know, RICO, you can pound somebody with a RICO
So that's
conviction.
the reason why you do RICO?
And the discovery.
What do you mean discovery?
The ability to throw the widest net possible with, in some ways, RICO is easy to convict because it's a bunch of amorphous, hey, it really looks like this is a group.
So why would the feds want to go after Diddy?
Because-
Give me the real reason.
Because it's a lifestyle. You take a look at what happened with this hip-hop lifestyle. It is a thing has become bigger in and of itself. It's become an industry. It's become a huge multinational corporation, much like you saw with the mafia and what they used to be able to do, where they had their hands in everything. Diddy had his hands in everything. So if you're going to go for something, you're going to go big on it. And you take a look at this stuff, and you take a look at some of the other, you know, crime charges that they brought on. Obviously, there was one in Georgia that they are trying to get at you with this RICO and trying to go after a lifestyle that they seemed has become just.
But at the end of the day, it was all about these freak-offs.
Right.
Like the trial's about baby oil. Like I get it if it's non-consensual, all of that. I get the criminal activity. I don't understand why we're looking at him as running a criminal enterprise.
That's a good point.
That's the point. Like, okay, sexual assault. You know, even if you want to do the trafficking alone, but why are we in the world of RICO? I think, why did the feds do it? Why? Just because it's easier for them? Is that why? Is it an easier thing for them to prove?
I think the salacious nature of this, it's been built up so big, you know, what was going on, that they figured, you know, people were just going to be terrified by this. And I still believe that it's about the ultimate punishment. If we can go after Diddy and we can prove racketeering, you know, this is going to be a big deal. And I think, you know, did they go a bridge too far with the racketeering?
I also just need to add, it's because other law enforcement and criminal justice remedies failed people and this Cassie video came out. No one cared about this other than in the rumor mill until we saw the viciousness of this video. And then people, smart, caring people said, why didn't anything happen to that guy? And when you talk to local prosecutors, they go, well, that's too big, it's too remote, we don't have the right resources, we don't have the ability. So they went to the Fed, and the Fed put together the case they could. And it happened to be overreaching, way too aggressive, and really looks like selective prosecution.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, guests are staying with us. When we come back, we're going to talk about those closing arguments, plus coming up next hour.
Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, it's the biggest true crime trial on our docket, set to begin in August, the Idaho college student murders. And tonight, new witnesses revealed from out of state. What evidence will they provide? We investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates. Tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
The brutal murders of 4 University of Idaho students.
Detectives arrested Brian Kohlberger.
And I pray that we have justice.
The Idaho College Student Murders Trial. Live coverage begins this August, only on Court TV.
Is it your decision not to testify in this case?
That is my decision, Your Honor.
Is that your decision? Now, it could be...
That is solely my decision.
Solely your decision. Okay, is there any further questions?
I mean, it's my decision, but with my lawyer.
All right, just to clarify, do you understand that it is your decision to make?
Yes, my decision to make. I'm making the decision.
And you've made the decision freely and voluntarily on your own behalf?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, straight from the transcripts from the courtroom, Diddy telling the judge, yeah, I'm not going to testify. And it's my decision, really. No, it's your decision? Yeah, it's my decision. So we're getting ready for closing arguments. It's closing arguments eve. And I want to go back to the prosecutor's opening statement, take a little piece of that and talk about how that may play during the closing. Let's take a listen.
This is Sean Combs. To the public, he was Puff Daddy, or Diddy, a cultural icon, a businessman, larger than life. But there was another side to him, a side that ran a criminal enterprise. During this trial, you are going to hear about 20 years of the defendant's crimes. But he didn't do it alone. He had an inner circle of bodyguards and high-ranking employees who helped him commit crimes and helped him cover them up. Kidnapping, arson, drugs, sex crimes, bribery, and obstruction. These are just some of the crimes that the defendant and his inner circle committed again and again. You are going to hear about all of them during this trial. The defendant called these encounters by different names over the years. First, freak-offs. Later, wild king nights or hotel nights. Week after week, the defendant directed freak-offs in hotels across the country and sometimes out of the country. At times, the defendant had escorts and the women travel from out of state. So the defendant's staff sometimes organized flights, cars, and hotels. The defendant's businesses paid those expenses. For 20 years, the defendant, with the help of his trusted inner circle, committed crime after crime. That's why we are here today. That's what this case is about.
I keep coming back to the same thing. Like, for 20 years, he's running a criminal enterprise and nobody did anything about it? I don't understand that.
Nobody else got arrested. Nobody else got convicted or prosecuted.
It's bizarre, right? This is a little, like, so this interpretation, I keep coming back to RICO. This interpretation of RICO, so if someone is running a business, right, and they have their secretary write a fraudulent check, and then maybe someone else does something else illegal, all of a sudden that's RICO, right? Under this definition, right? Because you're just people, like the purpose of his business was not freak-offs. Like R. Kelly, maybe it was, I don't know, and that was underage kids.
Underage girls.
Yeah. And that was underage girls. These are adults. It may be sexual assault and all that stuff. Do you think the jury might be bothered by this?
Well, here's the thing that I think is important. So you know, he had his employees do things, you know, book flights. It wasn't like he said, hey, here's $1,000 cash, go down to the airport and buy some plane tickets for these people, or, you know, nothing was on the books. I'm sure these purchases were made in the routine manner of business. You know, these were things that he was directing people to do. I mean, you know, are the employees going to say, hey, well, this isn't a prostitute that you're asking me to buy this plane ticket? No, this was all legitimate in their eyes, and there was no sense of let's hide it. I mean, he promoted these freak-offs, these white parties.
He wasn't hiding any of this stuff.
No, and why should he? I mean, it was a lifestyle he was promoting. It was a lifestyle that he was living. It was the lifestyle of being bad boys, okay? It was everything that he was putting forward, and then all of a sudden, he's the only one that's picked up. I mean, at least in the mafia cases,
everybody.
How many other plane tickets did they buy? I'm willing to bet his assistant buys a lot of plane tickets. Not, you know, 10, 20, 50 of them might be for these Purian activities, but you bought hundreds, if not thousands, of other plane tickets because it was your job. Like,
you've got, and you've got the problem here with, you know, by showing us the opening of the prosecutor again and taking a look at it, 3 out of 6 are gone.
They're gone.
The first 2 that he had, kidnapping, arson, okay, and then obstruction. So it was kidnapping, arson, obstruction. 3 out of 6 gone. So the jury's sitting there going like, well, wait a minute, we've been here for how long? And you started off that we were gonna hear 6 things, and now we're down to 3.
So historically, like RICO, what does it have to be the primary purpose of your enterprise crime, or it could just be a little?
It's a portion of the organization has a criminal intent, because you can have lawful intent to do business, but then use criminal means in order to accomplish an otherwise lawful goal. You're allowed to run a garbage company. You're not allowed to send a couple of your garbage workers off to take 10% of those clients and threaten them with violence if they don't re-up with you. That's turning it into that RICO. He was
or an episode of The Sopranos.
I'd watch both of them. But that's really the interesting part, and I really think re-listening to that, that's what you close with.
Right. Yeah. But let me when you said when
as
that's
the
what
defense,
as
the defense reads it and says, here it is.
Let me ask you this though about Diddy. This jury has heard all these horrific things that he has done. The women who were subjected to this not only have they heard about it, they watched it.
Right, the videos.
They watched it. What's the overall impact of that?
Yeah, I don't think you can overlook that. I mean, that's going to have an impact on these jurors. I mean, the fact that we see the domestic violence. I mean, that's a graphic video that people saw even before Diddy, got caught up in all this other stuff. And I think that's going to have an impact.
They watch the freak-offs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They watch the freak-offs.
Yeah, so.
I think that jurors, knowing how bluntly mean jurors can be and cynical jurors can be, look at that and look at the overwhelming repetition of these behaviors and might get cynical as to these complainants, some of whom were dragged into court. Because guess what? It was consensual because they all kept on coming back.
Well, that's going to be the argument, I guess.
It's a good argument.
Let's take a listen to a piece of the defense opening statement.
Sean Combs is a complicated man, but this is not a complicated case. This case is about love, jealousy, infidelity, and money. This case is about voluntary adult choices made by capable adults and consensual relationships. The government can say over and over again that this is not about his private sex life. But the evidence will show you that it is. Not one witness will get into this courtroom and will take that witness stand and tell you that they were part of any racketeering influenced corrupt organization act enterprise. And the reason is simple. There was not one. Perhaps they did not always show love to one another the way you would with your partner, but they were in a relationship and she was not being trafficked. This assault happened almost 10 years ago on March 5th of 2016. But I want to start by saying two things. That video shows domestic violence, not sex trafficking. Sean Combs has a bad temper. He sometimes gets so angry or so jealous that he is out of control. But he is not charged with being mean. He is not charged with being a jerk. He's charged with running a racketeering enterprise. Jane is also older than Cassie was when she started dating him. She is a capable, strong adult woman. She agreed, and they went to a private hotel room. Again, like a consensual threesome. And Combs would watch. We are telling you right now that he is physical, that he is a drug user, and I'm telling you he had a bit of a different sex life. Is that a federal crime? When you hear from the witnesses who testify here who will tell you they were victimized, and you ask yourself, what is their motive? For many of them, the answer is simple: money. We will not shy away from the things Mr. Combs did, but we will not own the things he did not do.
All right, these are going to be long closing arguments. 3 hours for this?
Yeah.
When you go frame by frame through the videos?
Well, I would, but I mean, that's just because I find it interesting. But from the standpoint of where she's coming from, it is an absolute perfect opening on a case like this. You couldn't understand his lifestyle if you wanted to. This is what he does. These people are with him. These people flock to him. These people stay with him. Okay, they're consensual adults. You may not understand it. It may not be happening on your block. It may not be happening in your lifetime. But this is the lifestyle he has. And I think that the government coming in and telling you you can't have that lifestyle, that may resonate with a jury and say, you know what, I don't like that.
Will they try to portray him as a victim, Diddy? A victim of the government or a victim of these women? I can't imagine that, will they?
I don't think a victim of the women, but certainly a victim of the government and the fact that they're putting a microscope.
So who becomes is the bad person? Because the defense always points the finger at someone.
The betrayal is the government.
They're going to point the finger at the government.
But the thing that I think is interesting about what we just listened to, Vinnie, is the defense could use that very same language, that exact language that they used in their opening statement in their closing.
Yeah.
And they didn't call a single witness.
Right.
And the prosecution called all these witnesses, and they have to run from their opening statement. I think that's significant.
And it brings up the kind of now, sex lives are like religion. Everybody's got their own. And when the government gets so aggressive,
Did he just say sex lives are like religion?
everybody's got
Where
their
do you
own.
go on Sunday?
Hey, listen,
Where are you
my
on-
life is my life, Vinny.
Our Lady
and
of
guess
Perpetual
what?
Motion.
I'm not going to criticize the way you do your thing as
Right.
long as it, it fits within some certain
All right,
railings.
I'm going to cut it off there before we
No.
go. But point taken.
Good point.
Everyone's staying with us. When we come back, we're going to talk about the big case out of Texas involving Karmelo Anthony, charges coming down, plus a lot more with our in-studio think tank.
In wake of this tragic incident, our family has been under attack. Whatever you think what happened between Karmelo and the Metcalf boys, my 3 younger children, my husband, and I didn't do anything to deserve to be threatened, harassed, and lied about.
That is the mother of Karmelo Anthony speaking out and talking about what's happening to her family after her son allegedly stabbed another student to death. The case has now gone to the next level. The grand jury heard evidence, and now the district attorney is speaking out. Let's take a listen to the district attorney and then the response of Karmelo Anthony's attorney.
Good afternoon. Earlier this spring, our community was shaken by what happened at a school track meet in Frisco. The violent loss of 17-year-old Austin Metcalf. For weeks now, my team has been presenting evidence to the grand jury, and today I summarized that evidence, and I asked the grand jury to return a first-degree murder indictment against Karmelo Anthony, which they did. With this indictment, the case now moves formally into the court system. From this point forward, we'll continue doing our job both fully and fairly to pursue justice under the law. As for the scheduling of the trial, that will be up to the court. But when the time comes, we will be ready. Now, we know this case has struck a deep nerve here in Collin County and beyond, and that's understandable. When something like this happens at a school event, it shakes people to the core. But let's remember that the justice system works best when it moves with steadiness and principle. That's what we're committed to, and that's what this case deserves. We're also mindful of Austin's family and everyone who loved him. Please keep them in your thoughts, and if you're willing, your prayers as well. Finally, let's remember that a defendant is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty in a court of law.
An indictment simply means that a grand jury, after hearing only the prosecution's side of the story, determined that there was enough evidence to allow the case to move forward to court. That's all an indictment means. Karmelo and his family are confident in the justice system and the people of Collin County to be fair and impartial. Of course, Karmelo looks forward to his day in court. It's only in a trial that a jury will hear the full story, one that includes critical facts and context that the grand jury simply didn't get to hear. It's only in a trial that both sides get to present evidence and cross-examine each other's witnesses. This is why our justice system is based on the principle of a full and fair trial. That's because it's only in a trial that the full story can be heard and that impartial justice can be done. We expect that when the full story is heard, the prosecution will not be able to rule out the reasonable doubt that Karmelo Anthony may have acted in self-defense. Self-defense is a fundamental right guaranteed every American. The law is clear. When self-defense is raised by the facts, the law puts the burden squarely on the prosecution to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the citizen accused did not act in self-defense. The law does not expect or require the citizen accused to prove that they acted in self-defense. It's actually the opposite. The law requires the prosecution to rule out the reasonable doubt that the citizen accused may have acted in self-defense. We understand that this case has sparked strong reactions. Please remember that there are real human beings, kids, on both sides of this case. We ask that everyone do as the law requires and withhold judgment until all the evidence can be heard in court. We are confident that when all the facts are presented and the full story is heard, the jury will reach the right conclusion and justice will be done.
All right, let's bring back in our think tank here in studio. Al Wunsch III, Matthew Mangino, Josh Schiffer. So, self-defense, right? It sounds to me, and the reaction of the public as well, this has struck a nerve. This is reminding me of the Kyle Rittenhouse case out of Kenosha, Wisconsin. Was also a self-defense case, was also a case where a bunch of people came to the support of the accused murderer and was raising money as well. What are your thoughts about how this is going to play out?
It's a track meet. We are at that point in our society where you could go to in a track meet, somebody is going to have self-defense and someone is going to be dead. I mean, this doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. It's a horrific thing. I think that the defense counsel made a big mistake putting what he did up on there. It was a ridiculous yawn, and then he doesn't say anything about a victim and the fact that there is a child who's dead. Okay, he goes right into a situation where he starts talking about the law, and then it's a self-defense thing. I would have gotten up there and just said, listen, I'll see you in court. That's when you're going to hear what we're going to do. To put up that, it was an absolute travesty, and it was a waste of time, and it was foolish.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. You know, it was a yawner on top of everything else. I mean, you couldn't even really listen along. You kind of lost you on the technical
Hopefully we didn't lose
aspects
any viewers.
Yeah.
Right?
But the thing is, it's certainly a tragedy. But again, we're in Texas, and Texas is a stand your ground state, and there's no duty to retreat in Texas. And you know, you can defend yourself if you reasonably believe that you're in imminent fear of bodily injury or serious bodily injury. But of course, there also has to be proportionality. I mean, you can't stab somebody who grabs you by the shirt or takes a swing at you necessarily. So it's going to be interesting to see how that develops. It's certainly different than the case we've talked about for the last couple of days on Court TV, the Valley case where you know, there's somebody stabbed and you're in Connecticut and you have a duty to retreat and you have all that sort of thing going on. It's a whole different story in Texas.
To me, this case, there's supposedly some video that may show something, maybe more than one video, but you've also got a bunch of witnesses. There's a bunch of athletes that are underneath this tent at the moment that this is happening. So if the grand juries come back and prosecutors are going with first-degree murder against the 17-year-old, does that tell you anything about the case?
Yeah, it tells me that the DA is hunting for trophies, and he's got one, and he can't not hunt for trophies. That's why they gave him that job. Go get the biggest, baddest trophies you can, even when it's a couple of teenagers surrounded by people and a questionable death. He went for first. But here's my real problem.
Well, but you're presuming some facts there, right? You're presuming that this was self-defense. It sounds like that they're surrounded.
Well, that's just listen. No, I didn't even say surrounded. I said that's what the defense is going to bring up, self-defense. And it's one of the three defenses. It wasn't me. I didn't do it, and he needed killing. This was a he needed killing. That's what's going to come out in the defense. But here's my real problem with those two statements. Totally inappropriate manipulation of a potential jury pool on both of them. And that's bad. It's just bad form. Second of all, Mr. Defense Attorney, love you, feel you, all that. Don't ever talk about the full story coming out in a trial. Trial's an exercise in hiding evidence from jurors.
It is. It absolutely
That's what
is.
trial is. And if anybody can talk about it, look at what we've watched the last 6 months.
Right. Yeah.
So what are we going to show a jury is what a trial is.
Exactly. So there's an update from the family of Karmelo Anthony. This has been another point of controversy and debate online. And I'll read this. This is from their Give, Send, Go page. Today we received the official news that our son is indicted. Your nephew, your friend, your neighbor. This is a moment we hope we would never face, yet one we've been preparing for. Your support has reminded us that we're not alone. Your love helped us stand in the face of heartbreak, threats, and misinformation. One that will demand everything from us emotionally, financially, and spiritually. Some may wonder what this fund is truly for. We want to clarify that. So there's a list. Safe relocation for our family after repeated threats and the public leaking of our address. Basic living expenses that we've had to uproot our lives. Transportation to and from court proceedings. Trauma-informed counseling, and for our entire family, enhanced security measures, and critically retaining qualified legal counsel and a thorough, fair investigative team. This has been this is a new in the world we're in now. All these defendants, not all of them, but a lot of the high-profile defendants are raising lots of money. Karen Reed over $1 million, Luigi Mangione over $1 million. I don't know how much they've raised, but they're raising funds as well.
Yeah, and that scares me.
Why does that scare you?
Well, because you know what? You're putting stuff up here and you're losing focus on the case. Oh, we need to be able to move. We need to be able to do this. We need to be able to do that. Woe is me. Okay, we have a victim. We have a dead child. We have a child who's got a first-degree charge against them. That's the principal focus. When you start bringing in, well, we need transportation. We need this. We need that. We need groceries. We need
And we
food.
need to break. We're out of time. Al Wunsch, Matthew Mangino, Josh Schiffer. Great to have you aboard.
Thank you.
Quick programming note, folks. Oh, this is a big one. One of the central figures in the Sean Diddy Combs sex trafficking trial will be joining me tomorrow night right here on Closing Arguments. He goes by the nickname The Punisher. He testified as part of the federal prosecution's case. He told the jury about his participation in freak-offs with Cassie Ventura. Here's a quick look at some of his testimony using AI-generated voices.
I was working as a male exotic dancer, stage name Punisher.
Do you recognize these individuals?
I do. Mr. Sean Combs, Ms. Cassie Ventura. I was hired sometime in late 2012 to create like a sexy scene, sexy erotic scene for them on occasion.
The Punisher, there he is, will be joining me live tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on Court TV. It's an interview you do not want to miss. All right, don't go anywhere. When we come back, something else you need to know tonight, plus coming up next hour.
Tonight on Vinnie Politan investigates the cold-blooded murders of 4 University of Idaho students in the early morning hours of February 13th, 2022. Where did the suspect go after the stabbings? Tonight, we investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates, coming up next, only on Court TV.
A high school party ending in a fatal stabbing.
It was very hectic. People started yelling, screaming.
But what led to this tragedy in an affluent community?
The Preppy Party Murder Trial. Live coverage weekdays, 8/7 Central on Court TV.
Welcome back. Time to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Let's take a look at the big board. What do we have? Trial day 1. This is the trial of Brooks Houck and Joseph Lawson, both accused of the murder of Crystal Rogers, who's been missing for 10 years. It's a case we've been tracking for years here on Court TV and on Closing Arguments. But unfortunately, folks, the judge doesn't want you to see the case. Cameras are permitted in Kentucky under judicial discretion, but this judge doesn't want the public to see what's happening, so all you will see are sketches, but we obviously will keep you up to date with what is happening. Big headline from today is that the defendant's mother allegedly asked one of her son's workers if he could find someone to get rid of Crystal. Please take a look at your television screens. We have a missing child who needs your help tonight. This is Aivah LaRue, just 13 years old, missing out of Raymore, Missouri since June 18th. Take a look at her picture. If you see her, pick up the phone, make a call, make a difference. 1-800-THE-LOST, 911, or you can call the Raymore Police Department. Don't go anywhere. We've got another hour of live true crime. Vinnie Politan Investigates is next. In the meantime, please don't forget to hug the kids.